What's going on YouTube? My name is Trey Kepsel and this is Elk Motorsport. On today's video, we're going to be doing a leak down test on the Suzuki Samurai because I have a sneaking suspicion that my overheating issue has to do with a blown head gasket, but I don't have a leak down tester. So through the magic of the internet, I have figured out how to make one. So let's get to it. Alright guys. The stuff that you're going to need to build this, you're going to need a compression tester because you're going to need a way to screw into the spark plug hole so that way you can put air pressure into the motor so that way you can see it leak down. And depending on how your air compressor is set up, some of them have quick disconnect fittings so you won't need these two little pieces that I got, but because it's 1/8, I had to get a 1/8 MPT little male-to-male fitting, and then I had to get an adapter that goes from 1/8 MPT to 1/4 inch MPT so that way I could attach a male quick disconnect air hose fitting to it. You're going to need 2 male quick disconnect fittings and 1 female. You're going to need a 1/4 inch T, preferably all 3 sides being female. This one only has 2 that are female and 1 male, so I had to get a female to female adapter that's 1/4 inch to go into here so my gauge can plug in. You also need a gauge that reads over 100 PSI because that's how much pressure you're going to put into the cylinder, 100 PSI. You're going to need 2 2-inch long 1/4 inch MPT pieces of pipe. You're going to need an air pressure regulator. I got this from Lowe's. It comes with a gauge, but I don't want to have the gauge on this regulator. So it comes with a 1/8 plug for one side. So I got a 1/8 MPT plug to plug the other side. You're going to need some JB weld. The JB weld I got is this clear. I got it because it says it cures in an hour. And on here on the front, it doesn't say it's good for metal, but if you flip it around the other side, it actually says that it is provides a strong and lasting bond on most surfaces, including tile, most plastic, ceramic, glass, wood, and metal. So it doesn't say metal on the front, but it says metal on the back, so it's good. Now, when you go to the hardware store, and you go into the plumbing section, they don't label it MPT, which stands for National Pipe Thread. They label everything, if it has male fittings, they label it MIP, which is male in pipe, or they label it FIP, which is female in pipe, which female ended fittings or male ended fittings. So just so you know, they're the same thing as MPT. Oh, and you're also going to need a number 60 size drill bit. Now you probably can get them individually. I've heard they're kind of hard to locate. This little set I think was like $20 or $25 or $30 from Harbor Freight, and it's a machinist drill bit set. I got this because whenever I got the My Turbo with the My Side 2, one of the ways that you go about tuning that carburetor is you have to drill out the jet size, and Myron says that you need to use these machinist drill bits. So I went ahead and got a set because it was really inexpensive and it has a number 60 in it, so that's what I need to use. And I'm going to explain to you why you need the JB weld and the drill bit size. But let's go ahead and start assembling this. So one of the very first steps that we're going to do is we are going to do this JB weld. You're going to take one of these 2-inch long 1/4 inch MPT pipes, and we're going to put the JB weld epoxy on one side. So what I'm going to do so that way I don't get this epoxy on the threads is I'm going to cover the threads with tape. I'm going to take this epoxy and I'm going to mix up a small amount. Nice, it has a little cap so that way you can save it. That's the other reason I like this one. Now I'm going to mix it up And now we're going to start putting it into the one side. But then you're going to flip it down like this, so that way it all settles to the bottom. All the air bubbles get out and it kind of just all settles in that one spot. And we have to let that dry for an hour. While we're waiting for that to dry, we can go ahead and start building the rest of this. Take our Teflon tape, which you will need because these are going to hold air pressure, so you're going to need this Teflon tape so that way you can seal all of it. Put this in one end of the fitting, the three-way fitting. Snug it up. And I'm going to put my female to female adapter on the top of the three-way fitting so I can attach my gauge. Now I'm going to put some Teflon tape on my gauge. And I'm going to screw it into my little assembly. Now I'm going to take my little 1/8 plug. I'm going to put some Teflon tape on it. And I'm going to plug both of the 1/8 holes for the gauges on this regulator. Now I'm going to take one of my male fittings. I'm going to put some Teflon tape on it, and I'm going to put it in one of the sides of this regulator so I can connect an air hose for my air compressor up to it. And now I'm going to get this hose for this compression tester set up. And the hose is done. Now all I have to do is wait for that epoxy to cure, and then we can take that number 60 drill bit and drill into it. Now the reason why you have to do that is because you're going to plug in that air pressure and that tool will be contained. So then you'll regulate it all the way up to 100 psi, but whenever you hook it up to the spark plug hose adapter to the cylinder and you hit it with 100 psi, if you don't have that little bitty hole to let it slowly fill the cylinder, you'll shock that cylinder and those rings and everything with a pure 100 psi of pressure. So instead of doing that, you have that epoxy with that little bitty hole drilled in it from that number 60 drill bit. That's pretty much what makes a leak down tester a leak down tester. The gauge and the fittings and all that stuff really isn't a big deal. It's just that part of the tool, that blockage that slowly allows the cylinder to fill, that makes a leak down tester a good tool. For me, it's Saturday. AutoZone doesn't have one. Other places have one. I would have probably just bought one, but through the magic of the internet, I was able to find how to build one. So this way I can just build one and we can test this to see if my head gasket is leaking. And what I'm going to do that is I'm going to hook it up to the cylinder and I'm going to pull the radiator cap off and I'm going to check each cylinder and see if bubbles come up through the coolant. Because the only other way to find out would be to actually pull the cylinder head off. And I'm kind of at a loss trying to figure out why my truck is getting hot under load. A lot of other guys have the turbos and they don't have a problem with the temperature going radical. I mean, I'm the only guy that's put an oil cooler on a Suzuki Samurai because of the turbo and tried all these other things, going for the 70% water, 30% coolant mixture. I mean, I've really tried to do everything. I've even taken my winch apart to free up air flowing through. I've shown you guys that in another video, and removed the condenser fan and all this other stuff, chasing down how to keep the engine temperature under control. But from what I've seen from a lot of people on Facebook and on forums, that's what these vehicles tend to do. They'll get a bad head gasket and coolant won't go in the oil, and the oil won't go in the coolant. You'll just get you'll get like high temperatures, but not atrociously high temperatures, and then you'll get the overflow, bottle overflowing or spitting coolant out, which is something that I have too. So this is kind of just, I was hoping this wasn't it, because this is a rebuilt engine. I was hoping this wasn't gonna be the case, but you know, could have been a defective cylinder head gasket. So we'll find out here shortly. Well guys, it's been a couple of hours and I cleaned off that paper, and we have this 1/4 inch MPT pipe with a plug in it now. So now we take our number 60 drill bit. I'm gonna have to put tape on the end so that way it'll actually fit in the chuck of the drill, and we're gonna drill a hole. Hole is cleared. So now we have the most technical part of this tool done. So now I'm going to put some Teflon tape on this plugged end. I'm going to put it into, it doesn't matter what's in this plug goes, but I'm just going to put it in the end facing the T. I'm going to be sure to grab it back here towards the back, away from the plug, so I don't crush the plug. And now we're going to put the regulator on. And now just got to put the last female connector on. And there you have it, a home-built leak down tester. End up putting the hose that goes into the cylinder in this end, and you'll attach your air compressor to this end. Now all that's left is to actually perform the leak down test. Alright guys, I have the air compressor set to 110 psi. It's 10 psi over 100 because on this leak down tester, you wanted to have it set at 100 PSI. That's what we're gonna test the cylinders at. I have the number 1 spark plug pulled, and I have the motor at top dead center, so all the valves are shut and the combustion chamber is completely sealed off. I have the transmission in gear so that way the motor won't crank over with the air pressure pushing down on the cylinder. And I have the Schrader valve pulled out of that compression checking tools hose. You have to have that set out, otherwise you'll plug in that hose and the hose will just get pressurized. It won't pressurize the cylinder. So you can use one of those tire valve removal tools to take out that Schrader valve. And now we're just gonna put the pressure on the cylinder, and I'm gonna check inside where the radiator cap seals. I'm gonna check in there and see if there's any air bubbles. So the pressure drop went down to like a little below 90 PSI, which is fine. I don't have any air bubbles in the coolant though, so this cylinder's fine, or the head gasket's fine. You can actually, I don't know if you can probably see it, the drop. See, like, there it is at 100. I can adjust it with this regulator up to 100. Then plug it in, and oh, we're at 90. See, so it must have dropped a little bit. So that's just like a 10% drop, which is completely acceptable. That means that the piston rings are good, everything's sealing really well. Head gasket's good, no leak in the coolant. I'll take the transmission out of gear so that way I'm able to cycle the motor over. All right, top dead center of cylinder numero dos. All right, well, that's the cylinder for sure, because all the other ones didn't even drop to 90, and this one dropped down to 50. And I've got to be in the right place. Gots to be, because if it was open all the way, it drops down to 20. So it's cylinder number 2. The gasket is no bueno. Whew. Hot, weather warmed up. Well, that does it for this video. Cylinder number 2 is definitely the problem. I didn't have bubbles in the coolant system, but all the other cylinders at top dead center on the compression stroke, they didn't even have a full 10% drop, which is acceptable. They didn't even make it to 90. But in cylinder number 2, dropped down to 50 PSI, 50% drop in pressure. I don't think it's the piston rings, because the motor has power. I mean, I would have detrimental power loss if the piston rings were leaking by. The motor's not warm. The motor might need to be really warm, but I don't want to heat it up all the way and then start pulling spark plugs and strip out thread holes. And the coolant is overflowing into the coolant reservoir, so it's got to be that cylinder. I mean, I already had a really good idea talking to Meyer and guys and all the guys on social. I had a really good idea that it was cylinder head gasket. I just wanted to do this test, kind of show you guys how you can build your own leak down tester and how to go about testing the cylinders. Pretty much figured out that that's the problem. So I actually already have a head gasket kit, or it's actually an entire gasket kit. It's a KP gasket kit from Japan that Zuks Offroad sells. All the gaskets you need to redo a motor. It's got the timing cover gasket, it's the back metal plate, it's got that foam gasket, it's got all the gaskets. It's a very nice kit, high quality stuff. I'll do like a little product review installation of that when I do the head gasket. I'm also going to do some stuff with the exhaust manifold. I don't know what just happened right there. I'm gonna ceramic coat the exhaust manifold gasket and the turbine housing. I actually have some Cerakote. This is just a little tester, but that I've used their product before. I've got a spray gun and everything. It's real nice. This stuff, you can air cure it. After 5 days, it's cured. I think I'm gonna send it all off, and I'm gonna like contact probably like PTP to have a turbo blanket made. It'll actually wrap around the exhaust manifold and the turbine housing. It'll be fit specifically for this kit, which will be nice because there's a lot of vital components around there. I mean, if you guys have seen my throttle cables wrapped in that titanium weave braid, it's meant for spark plug wires, and you have the spark plug boots, you know, trying to protect a lot of stuff. So doing that blanket will be really good, and it will work for all my turbo kits because that's what this is. So it's gonna fit this, it'll be able to go on any of that stuff. So I'll just bite the bullet and I'll have that made, and then it'll be something that Myron could sell, or you could contact PTP and you could get it made. Maybe I'll talk to Myron about like putting it in the kit. I don't know. We'll have to see how much it comes out to be extra, you know. But so that's what the plan is. If you liked the content in this video, be sure to hit like. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so that way you can stay up to date on what I've got going on in the shop. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.